just to confirm we are now live.
Oh, good evening, everybody. I'm sorry about the late start of the meeting. We've had a few technical issues, but I think what I should say is on what is actually Global Accessibility Awareness Day. I would like to thank you all for attending our inaugural online cabinet meeting. I know that many others would like to be here in person, and maybe things have not run that smoothly tonight as we would like, and as we've just witnessed, things sometimes do go wrong. But I think what I would say is that we have learnt many things over the last few weeks, and one of those is let's just try it. And it is that positive attitude that has flowed through the council services, the community and the wider voluntary sector over the past few weeks, those who have gone a whole extra mile. And I am so proud to see our borough glow from the great community spirit that Harrow holds at its heart, for going above and beyond to deliver services that were so desperately needed at a time of crisis, and for keeping our residents safe and protected. It also gives us hope for a positive future. Our last cabinet meeting was held prior to lockdown on the 19th of March, with just 4 cabinet members in the room, our monitoring officer Hugh Pearce, all properly social distancing, and we had Councillor Paul Osborne, Leader of the Opposition, joining us by phone. And just 8 weeks later, we have video conferencing, and I'd like to welcome Paul to Cabinet tonight as non-executive member. But what I think we should do tonight is I think we need to reflect that Harrow has been one of the hardest hit boroughs by this terrible virus, with many of our residents, quite rightly, still very fearful of infection, and the last thing anyone would want is for a second wave. As at the 5th of May, it's not that long, just 2 weeks ago, 359 Harrow residents had died from this terrible virus. These are people who have been taken too early, have left loved ones who have not been able to grieve properly. The Mayor, as the first citizen of Harrow, will lead a remembrance for Harrow citizens once we are through the crisis at the appropriate time and in the right way. And we will also have the opportunity to properly thank the people of Harrow for the community cohesion that they have demonstrated, and we would all wish to continue. Before we formally start the meeting tonight, could you please ensure that your mobile phone is switched off or on silence? I don't think there's anything worse than hearing a vibrating phone when on an online call. I need to remind, I would like to refer actually officers and members to the published protocols for holding virtual meetings in Harrow Council, and I need to make just some notes, ask you to note some particular points. Could members ensure that they have their videos on at all times and microphones on mute unless speaking? There will be time given to unmute when invited to speak at the meeting. I think we're all getting used to online meetings and the protocols, but I'd like to remind everyone, please wait to be invited to speak and no over talking, or we won't know what has been said. In case of technical problems, the meeting may adjourn until the issue resolved, and that is something we've just seen. We're prepared to make these adjustments to make sure we can do things, and we're going to learn from this. But if the technical problems persist and the meeting is incorrect, the meeting will be abandoned and rearranged for a later date. If I have technical problems, then the chair of the meeting will transfer to Councillor Keith Ferry as Deputy Leader. And can I also please note, or ask you all to note, that the meeting is being audio and video recorded and will be available to watch, listen on the website. For the purpose of the minutes, I need all those present to introduce themselves. To ensure we don't have a sudden influx of speakers, I will ask cabinet members first, then council officers, then other councillors who are on the call. So we can do it in the order I sent out. It is, I am Councillor Graham Henson, Leader of the Council. I think we have Keith.
I'm Councillor Keith Ferry and I'm Deputy Leader of the Council.
I'm Councillor Sue Anderson, Portfolio Holder for Community Engagement and Accessibility.
I'm Councillor Simon Brown, Portfolio Holder for Adult Services and Public Health.
Phil?
Yep, I'm Councillor Philip O'Dell, Cabinet Member for Housing and Member for Wildstone Ward.
Varsha?
I'm Councillor Varsha Palmer, portfolio for environment.
Christine?
I'm Christine Robson. I'm a West Harrow councillor and I have the portfolio for education and children's services.
And Krishna?
I'm Councillor Krishna Suresh, portfolio holder for community cohesion and craft.
And Adam?
Adam Swersky, councillor for West Harrow and portfolio holder for finance and resources.
We have 3 non-exec members of cabinet, so can we take those in order? Antonio?
Councillor Antonio Vice, non-executive member of cabinet.
Councillor Paul Osborne?
I am Councillor Paul Osborne. I'm not a member of cabinet. I'm the leader of the opposition, the Conservative group on the council.
And John?
I'm John Higgins, non-exec for the voluntary sector representative.
Could I go through the officers that are actually on the call, please? Do you want to start with your team, Sean? No, we seem to. We got Sean.
Sorry,
Harris.
Sean Harris, Chief Executive.
Corporate directors. We've got Paul, and Charlie.
Charlie Stewart, Corporate Director for Resources.
Good evening, I'm Paul Hewitt. I'm the Corporate Director for People Services.
Hello, I'm Paul Walker, Corporate Director for Community.
And we have Hugh and Dawn.
Hi, I'm Hugh Pearce, Legal Services.
Dawn Calvert, the Council Director of Finance.
Do we have any other officers on the call?
So you've got me, you've got Alex Dewsnap, Director of Strategy and Partnerships.
Thank you, Alex. Do we have any other councillors? I saw you, Marilyn, or heard you. Is Marilyn there? No, is Richard there?
Yes, I'm here, Richard Armand, Pinner South Council. I have a question on the agenda.
And Pritesh?
Yes, it's Councillor Pritesh Patel, Harrowfield Ward, Shadow Portfolio Holder for Finance and Commercialisation.
Thank you. So we're just waiting for Marilyn. I thought she was on the call just now. Can I just check with Democratic Services that I've included everyone that we need to include?
Yes, Leader, that's everyone. Thank you.
So we have to make a decision in a minute how we deal with Marilyn's questions. I think she's trying to dial in as well. So if we move through the agenda, apologies for absence. We've received no apologies for absence. So we move on to declarations of interest. Can I have declarations of disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests? And please can you indicate and wait until you're live before stating the interest. So firstly, are there any declarations of interest from members of Cabinet? No, if any become due, could you let us know when we were listed at that time? Are there any declarations of interest from other members present in the meeting? Although we're waiting for Marilyn, we'll check with Marilyn when she attends the meeting. We now move on to petitions. I am aware that Marilyn wants to, Councillor Marilyn Ashton would like to present a petition tonight. We will allow her to do that once we can get, once she turns up onto the call. Is that okay?
Yes.
Thank you. We have not received any public questions, so that moves us to councillor questions. So I know Marilyn has asked questions number 1, number 2
and 3.
Number 3. We can move back to them in a minute. So if we move to question 4 first, that would be Councillor Pritesh Patel asking the question of Councillor Varsha Palmer. Pritesh, do you want to ask?
Thank you. Yep, certainly. Thank you, Leader. And my question is to Councillor Varsha Palmer, portfolio holder for environment. Councillor Palmer, many parts of Harrowfield and some parts of the borough have not had their grass verges cut for some time during the lockdown period, and are looking extremely untidy. When will the council resume its service to cut and maintain grass verges and overgrown greenery?
Thank you, Pritesh, for your question. The crews continue to go out and give that service. In Harrow Wheel, the teams were out in College Hill Avenue and Kenton Lane and the surrounding roads. They are due to go out on Friday as well. They have adapted really well because they are working with reduced staff due to self-isolation, but they do also work late and weekends. So I do want to sort of express, you know, my gratitude.
I'd like to be back in.
Oh, that's Marilyn. To say thank you to the teams for their dedication.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. I very much appreciate the hard work that's been put in by the maintenance teams. And I've recently noticed, just beginning of this week, some of the patches of overgrown grass in Harrow Wheel being cleared. But may I draw your attention to some of the problems that other members are experiencing, especially we've received a number of queries from North Harrow, where queries have been raised with respect to uncut grass verges. But we've received no reply from any of the officers. So I'd appreciate if you look into that. Also, I draw your attention particularly to the borders of Cedars open space near Courtney Avenue and Uxbridge Road. I know some work has been done in and around the roundabout, but I would appreciate if we can have some form of grass cutting there. A lot of families actually use that ground, especially during these periods and during the hot weather. And I would appreciate some kind of attention to that area before it becomes a little bit too overgrown. But I appreciate the hard work that's going on by the officers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pritesh. We'll look into that. Just be mindful that we are working on reduced teams, so we will get to all of that, and I'll get the officers to have a look into all that for you.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll do question 5, and then we'll go back to Marilyn's question. I think I heard Marilyn on the call. Richard, Richard Ormond, you've got question number 5.
This is to Councillor Robson. What do our schools require which they do not yet have to begin phased reopening from the beginning of June?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Almond. Hello, Richard.
Good evening.
Good evening. I mean, I understand that brevity is the soul of wit for this evening, so I'll try to keep to that, though I think you may know that it's not one of my usual characteristics. I think that the main things that schools require are further clarity on the transmission risk from widening the number of children who will be participating in school, and for the DFE and all stakeholders to agree a position so that more staff can be available, so that we can plan for the opening for specific year groups, and so we can all actively support wider opening.
Richard, did you have a supplementary question?
Yes. Are we going to leave the decision in principle to individual schools and their boards of governors and heads, or is the council going to issue further guidance between now and the beginning of June to schools? And can I take it, which I hope the answer will be yes, that we aren't going to have any indulging in political gestures as is happening in some other councils up and down the country?
Thank you. Well, I think you know me, Richard. Our focus is, and it always will be, on safeguarding. And we, as a local authority, as you know, we are where we are, and schools are, even the schools that are not independent schools or academies, actually do all have a measure of independence, which we respect. And I think that the best way forward is through talking and collaboration. Now, there's been a lot of that. There's been a lot of that from the very beginning. And our role, as I see it, is to support schools in making the decisions that they make. But they shouldn't be making them as if they are feeling isolated on an ice floe in a cold and bitter sea. They have a lot of support from us. They've had it from the beginning and they will continue to have it. And I do not think this is a time for doing anything other than acting collaboratively. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Not entirely is the answer, but nevertheless, that's all I'm getting.
You won't get the last word, Richard.
No, you won't.
Sorry, Christine. Marilyn, are you on the call now?
I hope so, Leader. This is all. I think my first question might be rather germane then. Shall I ask it?
Actually, Marilyn, first of all, just go back to the parts you've missed. I understand you had a petition that you wanted to present first. So
well, I have, except that obviously we're timed. So as long as this is taken out of the time for questions, it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, if I may present my petition then, Leader.
Yeah, if you want to read the petition out, yeah.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much. This is on behalf of the Little Common residents. We would like to have a speed limit reduced on Little Common, Stanmore, Middlesex, HA7 3BZ. Currently, vehicles using the road can go quite fast, and we request that the speed limit be reduced to 10 miles an hour. And the reasons are as follows. Much of Little Common has a gravel surface, and cars go faster than 10 miles an hour and cannot stop easily as they would on a tarmac road. A number of families with small children live on the common, as well as some elderly people, and others walk across Little Common to the nature reserves. Children and elderly people may not be able to get out of the way of vehicles going above 10 miles an hour easily, particularly in places where there are blind corners. Second reason is the road was recently resurfaced with gravel at considerable expense, utilising the Stanmore Park Ward NCILS money, and we would like to protect it as much as possible from vehicle damage. Faster vehicles inflict significantly more damage to a gravel surface, so having a lower speed limit will mean a longer lifespan for the gravelled area, thus saving the council and taxpayers money. Third reason, faster cars create more dust, which is unhealthy and unpleasant to breathe, and which settles on residents' cars. Less dust means that people have to wash their cars less often, which is better for the environment. And the fourth reason, a lower speed limit means less pollution, which is also better for the environment and people's health. And this is signed, Leader, by 57 people. And the chairman of the Little Common Residents Association will actually hand deliver this to the Civic Centre for the attention of Paul Walker. Okay?
Thank you, Marilyn. That's very good. Yes. So now, if we now move to the councillor questions, I think your first question is to me.
Yes, Leader, and little did I know how relevant this would be. Does the Leader believe that the council is up to speed and using the most accessible, user-friendly and interactive software for virtual council meetings?
Well, thank you, Marilyn. It's nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, but this is not very good, is it, tonight?
Well, as I said right at the beginning, I don't know if you got my introduction to the meeting tonight, but I did say that, that we don't expect things to move as smoothly as we'd actually really like. From 8 weeks ago, we were sitting in committee rooms 1 and 2 with people, Paul Osborne dialing in to the call. And 8 weeks later, we're trying to move things online. And I understand that the planning meeting went exceptionally well last night. But moving to the real part of the question is that in common with many other councils, I think we're excited to be using the latest Microsoft Office Teams software to host virtual meetings, which has been chosen because it's part of the strategic suite of Microsoft products which the council has already purchased. And it comes at no additional cost to us or the council taxpayer, and will become increasingly familiar and easier for us and our staff to use as we roll out the new technology across the council. So this is sort of like a learning curve, and we will learn from the experience of how we hold meetings, and hopefully they will improve over the period of time. Did you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you very much. I mean, Leader, first of all, the planning meeting was okay last night, but at the briefing, some of us couldn't get in, and it's all been very stressful. And I don't know why you say that this is not going to cost the taxpayer money, because we've all had to have delivery of quite expensive tablets in order to be able to operate the system. So I don't know about that. But the point is, Leader, that there's been a lot of talk about restarting democracy. And there are other boroughs that have held meetings all through this. I mean, Barnet and Ealing, they had virtual meetings in April. And we're now in the latter half of May. And only yesterday we had our first virtual meeting. And frankly, it was a miracle that it worked. What I'm saying is that I think we've been a bit slow at actually getting this to work properly. So it's not a surprise that tonight we ended up with a real fiasco, to the extent where none of us could get in, and somebody actually had to come to my house and sit in the garden, because there's no way that I could could access this meeting. And even our chief executive couldn't get in. And I think he's having to have this meeting on the phone. So I ask you, Leader, with respect, do you really think this is going well?
Actually, from where we come from, now we are a low-funded council. We always have been, and we've always been behind the curve. Now, but I just pay credit to the staff who, in 8 weeks, have managed to get over 1,000 people online working remotely from this council, and also in a secure environment. Now, I know there's other apps available. I know there's other products available, but the fact remains that we're trying to do a lot of things in a short amount of time, and it's also things got to be prioritised about how we can do them. So we are making our public meetings. It was actually in the draft borough plan that we would look to have online meetings, but we need to make sure that a lot of this is in a secure environment, and it also fits in with the current Microsoft suite that we're downloading to. When you talk about devices, the devices improve over a period of time, and we upgrade those like every other part of the industry does. But when we looked at other councils who use different technology that's being used, the majority we use in Microsoft Teams because of the integration and the security that it holds. And our key ambition is to make sure that we protect our residents' data. So yes, it has had teething problems, but will we learn from it? Of course we will, and it will improve. So now we move to question number 2, which I think you are asking of Councillor Varsha Palmer. Marilyn, can you wait a minute? They're just going to unmute you. Oops. No, don't say anything, because that's it. You can speak now. Okay.
Oh, jolly good. Right. Hello, Varsha.
Hi.
Does the environment portfolio holder believe that those who have subscribed for the garden waste service have received their stickers? And if not, will we be emptying garden waste bins without stickers in the interim period to allow enough time to reissue those stickers that have failed to arrive?
One moment, Varsha, your microphone's muted. Can you unmute your microphone, Varsha?
Turn the microphone on.
Oh, I did unmute it.
That's it. Thank you. Carry on, Varsha. No, you've muted it again. That's it. Stop. Don't press anything. No, you mute.
Okay. So the garden waste service was relaunched on Monday, 11th of May, with around 21,500 residents that had signed up. We are operating 2 weeks grace period for any of the outstanding bin stickers that were issued for any customers who have not received them or mislaid them, etc. So, we believe that that would help to alleviate all the issues.
Marilyn, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Jolly good. Well, I mean, I understand that, clearly, you want this to work well, and nobody's saying you don't, but the reality is slightly different. I have received loads and loads of emails from people that haven't had their stickers, or they've had multiple stickers. I mean, even the leader of the opposition, Paul Osborne, has had multiple stickers. So what's happened is we either didn't send them out, or we sent loads. I mean, I think people start selling them on eBay if we're not careful. We've sent loads of stickers out. And actually, I have to be honest, I think this is a complete shambles. And I don't think people would mislay their stickers. I don't think you can blame members of the public for our failures. We have got this a little bit wrong. And so I'm not really very reassured, but am I to understand from your answer that we will be emptying all bins with or without the stickers for a little while until we've got this sorted?
That's right. As I said earlier, we're giving them a couple of weeks grace, so that will give us the opportunity to ensure that everyone's got the right stickers, etc. You know, I don't think, and I don't agree with you, that it's a shambles. This is one of the best systems we've had put in place. Obviously, it's the beginning of the service, so you are going to get teething problems like we have with every service, and we will ensure that whatever needs to be done will be done. But to be critical on the first month of the new service and of the beginning, I don't think that's fair, Marilyn, to be honest.
Thank you, Varsha. So because we started slightly late, Marilyn, I think we'll allow your last question. I think that's to me, isn't it? So question number 3.
Well, I should jolly well hope so, Leader. Otherwise, you know, it would be a bit unfair. Anyway, now I will ask it, but I don't think you're doing us a favour to let me ask it. As people are beginning to return to work, what is the council's policy on offering free parking so as to support the restarting of the economy, as well as helping people avoid using public transport?
Well, Marion, once the crisis started, we had an agreed interim parking and enforcement policy, which was designed to assist residents, visitors and key workers in the borough. We are keeping this under constant review to ensure we deliver the best possible solutions in line with government advice as we transition back to normal.
Yes, thank you, Leader. If I may ask a supplemental question.
Of course, yeah.
It seems clear to us that as people return to work, it is better for their safety to drive to work in their own vehicles rather than risk crowded public transport. Surely residents should not be made to choose between risking their health or paying extortionate parking fees while they're trying to earn a living. In other words, Leader, surely we should cut people a bit of slack now, because they are being encouraged rightly to try and go to work if they can't work from home. But we've got to make life a bit easier for people, haven't we?
Well, I think we have made it easier for people because we relaxed the parking controls right across the borough through the CPZ. So we must remember, actually, why the controlled parking zones were introduced. It is so people can park near their homes without being overcrowded parking by visitors or people just turning up. So I think they have done, well, the council's been very flexible in how it approaches it, and also for the key workers and people living in that area who don't have a parking permit can also apply to the council to have those issues taken in consideration. But what we must look at is that we don't want to end up in a gridlocked sort of area because people about parking. People, when they drive their cars, they take in consideration where they can park their car. I think everyone does, and they park when there's proper parking spaces available, and then they pay for any charges that they might to do. But what is annoying me at this moment in time is the amount of people who are parking all over single yellow lines and double yellow lines. And as the enforcement team grows back, they will be enforcing that, because that's part of the Road Traffic Act, that people shouldn't park in dangerous places on double yellow lines, block people's driveways or anything else. So I think the council has been very flexible throughout this crisis. A large number of people who are key workers and health workers have had temporary permits issued, and we will continue to do so, and we will review it in due course.
I beg to differ, but thank you very much, Leader.
Thank you, Marilyn. There's no further questions, so we did manage to get through them all, slightly over the 15 minutes, but we did make allowances. We now move to the report on page 5 of the report tonight on the agenda, and the Council's response to COVID-19. I would like to draw members' attention to the supplemental agenda that has been published, which provides some updates since the publication of the main agenda. And during this debate, I will also ask the Chief Executive to speak to this item as appropriate. I just want to say some few words in introduction, and then I will probably sum up better at the end. So the purpose of this report tonight is to set out and seek ratification of the myriad of decisions that have had to be taken over the last 8 weeks as the Council quickly responded locally to a national crisis. Just a few short months ago, in February, we were setting out a budget that highlighted the many challenges we and our residents faced as a borough, and showed that the burden of costs for residents paying for council services has gone from 51% in 2015 up to 77% now. And at our council meeting in February, where we agreed the budget, Councillor Adam Swirsky also made a statement in relation to COVID-19, and our emergency planning team started to ramp up to prepare for a crisis. We entered this emergency situation with services already under massive pressure, and I would like to commend our staff who started developing the emergency plan and who all rapidly responded to the COVID-19 crisis as it turned into a pandemic. That response is highlighted within the report, which sets out how in Harrow we ensured that we got the homeless people off the streets and into safe accommodation, and rapidly stepped up and created new services to support the vulnerable and those most in need. Despite at times reduced numbers of staff, due to many self-isolating, our key services quickly moved to a 7-day week operation. We have ensured that our waste collection services were maintained, our streets kept clean, our parks kept open, supported our schools, hot meals delivered, food supplied, timely discharges from hospitals, PPE supplied, and so much more. We've even had other councils approach us to see what we are doing so well around opening a recycling centre due to the problems they are facing in their own boroughs. And to answer an earlier question, I think that a strategy set out last year in the draft borough plan quickly moved forward in response to the pandemic, and that is how we have over 1,000 staff having remote access to IT systems so they can continue to deliver services without having to go to the civic centre. And all that was in place within weeks, and in the past it has taken some time to do. To see an insight of how the virus impacted Harrow, I would urge you all to read from page 49 of the report tonight, which is an email timeline of how the council responded. This is information that was sent to councillors at that time, and also updated the across the council of how we were responding. And I have to say, none of this has been easy, and quite easily we could have not have done it, and quite clearly, sorry, I think we could not have done it on our own. The council pulled together with the local resilience forum, the NHS, care providers, faith groups and local communities to ensure help got to the most vulnerable and support those desperately in need. I applaud the speed and flexibility of council staff that, despite the practical challenges, have gone above and beyond to deliver the essential services that are so urgently needed by so many during this crisis. In a moment, I will ask Cabinet members to highlight some of the amazing work that has taken place by the Council within their portfolios. But I would like to end my introduction by saying that as a number of infections reduces, we must also look to recovery, not just as a council, but as a borough. And the report tonight starts to set out some of that narrative. We must also be wary of a second wave of this virus hitting our community. The council has effectively led our communities during the emergency response, and we now need to be empowered to support our communities as we tackle the serious social and economic tasks ahead. I pause my contribution at this time here, and we'll come back later in the debate tonight. But I would like now to invite Councillor Adam Swirsky to second the report on the agenda.
Thank you, Graham, and I'm happy to formally second the report. And it was a useful reminder because I'm both councillor for finance but also for emergency response, that in Harrow we were starting to make statements already to our council at the end of February and moving into a crisis preparation mode, preparing for a whole range of scenarios, making sure that our teams could continue to operate effectively no matter what happened in this crisis. And I'm extremely proud, and I think you've made many of these points, Graham, about the way the teams have responded, the way that we've kept essential services going throughout this crisis, not least, of course, our social care teams, which have been under enormous strain. And I think, many of us, or all of us, I think, are applauding them on Thursday nights. But their efforts are commendable. And I'd also commend not just those that are on the front line, but all of our officers who have seen huge change to the way they work, but also at a time of massive disruption in their own lives, and have continued to serve residents incredibly well. I'm also councillor.
Sorry, Adam.
Yeah.
Can I ask you to quickly turn your camera on, please? I don't think it's come live for some reason.
Camera's on, but it might not be appearing to you.
Oh, okay then.
I'm also a cabinet member for IT, and we know that for too long our IT systems haven't been in great shape, and I think we are moving mountains. We have moved mountains to make sure that our teams can work remotely, but we're also have a huge program of investment and an excellent new director of IT in place. And the fact that we have a couple of challenges with the teams, well, if we can recover from a global pandemic, we can certainly recover from cabinet starting a few minutes late. But I think it's impressive that actually we're moving the technology on very rapidly, and we'll continue to do so to operate flexibly. I want to talk just very briefly in terms of some of the investments that we've made and some of the work that we've done to deliver on programs that support our residents and businesses at a time of great difficulty. So we know that we've had hardship funding of about £1.4 million, and now much of that funding has gone directly to support those people who are on the lowest incomes and are in receipt of council tax support. So a considerable portion of that funding has gone to give £150 additional discount to all those on council tax support. We've kept some money back because we know that with very high levels of unemployment coming through, we're likely to have many more people come through on council tax support as well, and they will also receive that additional £150 discount, which for some people will be their entire council tax bill for at least the first 3 months of the year. We've also made sure that we put additional funding into a discretionary hardship fund, which is or an additional hardship fund, which is really targeted at those people who've run out of money and who are in urgent need of support. And while we've had a relatively few applicants who've come directly through that channel, many of the people who've come and asked us for hardship support, we've been able to help through, for example, community food deliveries, which I'm sure others will speak about shortly. We've also gone through or undertaken a huge effort to support well over 1,000 businesses, distributing nearly coming up to £30 million in business grants. And we know that we've had some challenges at getting all the money out, but the reality is that with a large number of small businesses in our borough and a relatively small business support team struggling with some pretty old-fashioned IT, we've managed to get out that funding in a very short space of time. And critically, we have focused on making sure that the right businesses get that funding and that we're not subject to either fraudsters or chancers who might otherwise take money from businesses who so badly need it. So we're well under that. That process is near completion, and the vast majority of our businesses will now have received grants. We're also making investments in our community, and we know that the voluntary sector have really stepped up in this crisis. And we put aside very early on £500,000 to support the voluntary sector, making sure that there was ready access to funds to pay for things like the additional food deliveries that people had, but also, of course, challenges around bereavement care and advice and support. And we'll continue to keep under review how we make sure that we support our voluntary sector during a time of enormous need. And the final investment or area of investment that I'll highlight tonight is around our social care providers. And you'll have seen that as part of the report, we reference the uplift that we've given directly to our providers to make sure that we're covering the additional costs. But as well as in addition to that uplift, we've also made sure that we've invested in things like purchasing PPE on their behalf and in a range of measures which will be of financial benefit to them to make sure that money flows directly to our social care providers. And the very final point that I'd make at this stage is that we know as well that although government has put some funding into councils to help cover some of those immediate costs, that the hit to councils as a result of this crisis is extremely significant. And some of that is the additional costs that I've spoken about. But we also know that there's some very significant hits to our income as well. And although there's been a fairly significant sum that's been provided to councils, it is outweighed massively by the costs and the loss of income that we're seeing. And frankly, many councils across the country are going to start quite quickly finding it difficult to pay their bills, and there's been much press around that. And we'll continue to do our piece in Harrow to highlight all the efforts, all the work that we're doing, all the critical work that we will continue to do to ensure that we're prepared for any kind of second wave, and that we're playing the huge role that we can play in the recovery effort. But that will require government to play its part and to keep its promises as well. Our strategy has been to make sure the financial support is there for our businesses and there for our residents, because we are all in this together. Thanks, Graham. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Adam. Greatly appreciated. I would now like to invite Sean Harris, who, as Chief Executive, will speak on behalf of the corporate board. But Sean has led all of this, our response to the COVID-19 development, and you're about to go through the report in not too much detail, Sean.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Cabinet and councillors. I think that the introduction that yourself and Councillor Swirsky gave there was very comprehensive, and so there are just a few points that I would like to make just to add to that. I think the first thing I would want to do is to underline the efforts and commitment shown by managers and staff within the organisation. It was 11 weeks ago yesterday when the management team of the council spent the morning beginning to plan for the anticipated pandemic, and over that 11 weeks council staff at all levels, particularly staff at the front line, but also staff who have worked very hard in non-frontline roles, have pulled together tremendously well to deliver a vast range of services, both existing and new, in an incredibly challenging set of circumstances. I've spent almost 30 years in local government, and I've lived through many crises and other issues, and there's nothing that has come close to the level of an intensity and complexity of work that has taken place over the last few weeks. So I do particularly want to underline the efforts of staff in the council over that period of time. I think the second thing I want to say as well is that this has been very much a joint effort, and a joint effort at a number of levels. We've worked very closely with other London boroughs. We've worked very closely with the NHS across North West London, where we've actually put a huge amount of work together, particularly to support care homes and social care. We've worked extensively with the police, the local CCG, and in particular the local voluntary sector, without which we would not have been able to provide support to a large number of very vulnerable local people. So I think the partnership working has been particularly strong. And perhaps the last thing I want to say is that clearly at the moment we are still dealing with the first wave of the virus, even though in London in particular the peak of hospital admissions, cases and sadly fatalities is much reduced from a few weeks ago. We are still dealing with an existing emergency, and all our emergency planning arrangements remain in place on a 7-day-week basis and will do for some time to come. But we're also seeking to restart as many services as we can, where we're allowed to under government guidance, and we're also planning very closely for the next phase of the restarting of services that may become the case from the beginning of June or the beginning of July. And finally, this is not a short-term emergency. Most commentators believe that we will be in some form of situation relating to the coronavirus for 18 months, with different waves and phases within that. So the council needs to remain very focused on ensuring that we can plan over that period, but also that we're building in all of the aspects of recovery that is necessary. Recovery for the organisation, support to the community, support to local businesses, and using our borough plan in order to be able to drive that recovery process. So I just thought there were a few points, Cabinet, that it was worth adding, which is set out in detail in the report. And we'll be bringing future reports to Cabinet in June and July, which will focus more on the future and what we will do next in order to be able to respond. But again, just to finally finish with a strong and heartfelt thanks to everybody involved in this, both members and officers in the council and the community, for everything that they've done to respond to this enormous challenge. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean. Greatly appreciated. We have some Cabinet members who've indicated they wish to speak, and I think the first person is Councillor Varsha Palmer. Are you there, Varsha?
Hi, I'm here. Just getting my camera on. Thank you.
I think what's happened, Marilyn, could you switch your camera off for a moment, because we can only have 9 people on the cameras on at one time for some reason.
Am I okay? Right. Okay, Leader, thank you. I just want to thank all the environmental teams and teams across the council for working together as a team to deliver the services. And, you know, we are not immune to the virus. We have staff who are off on self-isolation and are vulnerable as well. We have been using the resources carefully, which has enabled us to deliver the waste service priority of emptying all bins and keeping main routes clean. The garden waste service was suspended and has been relaunched on 11th of May and is doing really well, with more residents wanting to sign up. We have given a period of grace for a couple of weeks so that we can deal with any hitches. Our civic community site recycling was also closed and has now been reopened on 18th of May. And to ease the opening, we have taken the option of postcode days, so certain postcodes on certain days. We have had queues, but residents have been sensible and helpful and followed the rules as and we are also looking at the another option of the booking slots, booking system. Our Meals on Wheels service, customers service is growing, and it's a great help to the people who it serves. Our parks and open spaces remained open and are patrolled by our public protection and kingdom officers. We have issued fines and gently advised residents who have not followed the guidelines. It has been challenging at times, and some of our playgrounds and green gyms have been sort of misused and the secure tapes have been taken away, but they still remain closed and we have retaped them. The teams are in good spirits and working hard. The refuse teams have received praise, rightfully so, from residents, clapping, leaving notes and saying thank you in person as they pass on their rounds. We also suspended our enforcement and CPZ and parking and had issued NHS staff with letters so they were able to park in the zones outside of their own. We are now looking at slowly bringing back enforcement, which will be done in a phased manner with lots of communications. All throughout, we have sent communications out to residents, informing them of what has been happening through social media, the website, etc. Recent times, you will have heard about walking and cycling to work, etc., and widening the roads to help that go forward. We have done a lot of work on this, and we will bring that information to you shortly. However, to just reiterate that before this crisis, we have had done lots of work, always encouraging our residents to cycle or walk, and we shall continue to do that, and having to work within the guidelines that have been issued to us. Finally, some of you may know that we had a main water burst in Wealdstone with quite a bit of flooding and road destruction, I suppose, is quite bad. And our staff, as usual, went out there and done a fantastic job of putting the diversions in and making sure that everything was secure and that the water was resumed to the roads that had been affected. And they're continuing to work rapidly to repair the roads, etc., so everything can go back to normal. But I believe it's going to take a week. But I do want to take this opportunity to thank the staff in the environment, but also the senior staff, Paul and Mike, who have led the teams. It's been very challenging at times, but you know, they've done a fantastic job in leading the team. So I want to thank everyone for that. That's it. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Varsha. We'll now move to Councillor Simon Brown.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'd just like to pick up on a couple of things regarding adult social care, if I may. Firstly, talking about care providers, we've already agreed last Friday for an extra 5% temporary additional payment to them to help go towards the extra costs that they've experienced during this COVID emergency. And this is for any care home, any supported or extra care facility or mental health establishment where there is a Harrow resident with a care package commissioned by ourselves, that is Harrow Council. So this may be care homes in Harrow or across the border in Brent or Ealing or Hounslow, wherever it may be. And this we wanted to get out quickly to assist and support our care provider colleagues. And it's in addition to the support we're giving already in terms of a number of things, including enhanced care rates for COVID positive residents on hospital discharge, the extra top up of PPE, personal protective equipment, and support in testing. And just to look at the PPE or personal protective equipment, we've been very successfully working in collaboration with our West London Alliance colleagues and boroughs, and we've secured more than adequate supplies of PPE to enable us to provide care homes with top up when they were having difficulties with their own suppliers. I think you can say quite honestly that we've moved very quickly and effectively to support our care providers with nobody, so far as I know, running out of PPE in Harrow. Secondly, in support of our residents and also particularly in support of our care worker staff and their families, we've been able to provide, in conjunction, working very closely, as Sean has said, with NHS and CCG colleagues in Harrow and across West London, setting up our own testing facility at the Alexander Avenue Clinic, and provided our own Harrow special needs transport vehicles and staff to help transport local care workers who may not have cars to a local testing facility so that it's easy and so that they could have the surety of being tested that they were safe to remain at work. I would like to say I think that perhaps the care providers and particularly the staff have been, well, they are an essential part of our social care provision in Harrow, and perhaps up to now have been somewhat undervalued for the critical service they provide, particularly to our large elderly population. And I would hope that from now on we will ensure that they get the recognition support that they're entitled to. And then, as you can see in the report, we're asking for authority to make further payments throughout the year if the situation so warrants it to support care providers even more. Across our whole service, we've worked tirelessly to ensure that our particularly vulnerable client population, for example, all of our clients who previously attended neighbourhood resource centres, Wiseworks and the Bridge, which of course is no longer possible in this climate, have been supported with regular contact and with regular outreach support. We were at the start very worried about hospital discharges and whether we would be able to handle the volumes, but through the hard work of both ourselves and our NHS colleagues, we have coped admirably with this situation and we have had no problems on hospital discharges. So I think I've got to acknowledge here the huge amount of effort given right across our service by all staff, whoever they may be, who have really gone well above and beyond. And my sincere thanks also to them all and to our partners, both in health and in the social sector, who have likewise performed really exceptionally. And I think the bright note from all this for the future is the level and the willingness of collaborative working across our partners in Harrow and in North West London has really been amazing. And it absolutely gives me the view that we have something solid to build on as we move forward, as Sean says, into the recovery stages of this epidemic. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Simon. I'm conscious of time, but we will continue. Councillor Christine Robson.
Thank you, Leader. Well, I can talk fast, but I usually try and slow myself down on these occasions. I wanted simply to highlight the work of the Directorate during this emergency, because 3 minutes isn't long enough to cover all the work that they're doing. As I think all the people who are connected with the council will know, the school's response to the crisis was rapid and they showed tremendous innovation, and for that they deserve a great deal of praise. And we supported them throughout and will carry on doing that. We've always worked collaboratively with the Harrow Schools community, so there was a good foundation on which to build. Together, of course, we share a powerful focus on safeguarding, and the Directorate has offered additional support through Harrow Schools Standards and Effectiveness Team, I can never remember their new name, the Educational Psychology Service and the SENARS team, with strong models of risk assessment for them to follow. We have met regularly, virtually, and plan the next Heads and Directors meeting in 2 weeks' time to be virtual as well. We've also worked collaboratively with the DFE's regional team. Throughout, there has been, as there always is, a very strong link between schools and the Children's Social Services team, with a shared focus on mental health and well-being. Social workers have continued to work with their clients, with their families, both face-to-face and virtually. We have held CP meetings when needed, and we have kept up high levels of staff supervision, which is essential, as I'm sure you know, for safeguarding and quality. In response to the concerns of the school, we have established a new referral route into the MASH, where head teachers have identified families with no previously identified issues. But these are the cases where the families have not kept up contact with the school over their children's learning. And this has highlighted concerns. So this is a new link in, a new referral pathway. As we prepare for the gradual return to school for a number of children, we shall maintain our essential focus on safeguarding for children, young people, their families, and school staff and their families. The report, which is before you, refers to a huge amount of work done by council officers and staff, working 7 days a week. And I would echo that in this particular instance, I want to say, although I want to say a public thank you to everyone, it's my role at the moment to make sure that we say a public thank you to the teams in the Children's Directorate. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Councillor Krishna Suresh.
Thank you, Leader. First of all, during this pandemic, Harrow community made a huge difference, especially faith organizations each faith organizations came forward to help the vulnerable residents and elderly residents. Wanted to do shopping, wanted to collect the medicine and so forth. I had so many phone calls and I guided them in the right direction to work with the council associated voluntary organizations. Moreover, the faith organizations and the community organizations wanted to help the NHS and forefront key workers by providing meals. And since it's a very diverse borough, I've asked the communication department to translate the English language, the National Health Service guidelines and the council guidelines. It's about how to make use of the parks and public spaces into four different languages. So that makes a huge difference. We translated in Gujarati, in Romanian, and in Tamil also, as well as English. So this has been circulated to the diverse community, these prove to be how cohesively we are living in Harrow, and it showed how well the Harrow community uniting together, working together, and achieving together. And in terms of community safety, the Met Police, our Safer Neighborhood team, doing a wonderful job by keeping our residents safe with the Met Police COVID-19 law and order. The Harrow residents cooperated so well. The Met Police implemented the 4E methodology, especially in the parks and open space area, which is being guided by the MOPAC. The 4 E's, what is the 4 E's? It's about engage, explain, encourage, and enforce. When I say engage, it means be visible in public spaces and talk to people and explain, discuss behavior and reason why legislation is in place. And encourage, request and negotiate change behavior to ensure compliance with the law. And the last one, that to enforce. If these measures fails, the officer should consider enforcing measures by issuing antisocial behavior warning notice, fixed penalty notice, or if this doesn't work, the arrest warrant if necessary. And last of all, I salute to Harrow voluntary organizations, Harrow faith groups, and Safer Neighborhood teams for their hard work during this critical time. And also special thanks to our chief executive and his teams, and also Charlie, the two Pauls, Paul Walker, Paul Hewitt, and Alex, Dawn, and Hugh Peard. All your team's hard work made a huge difference during this time. I really value all of you and your team, and of course our council leader, and my cabinet colleagues are also worked so hard during this time. Did a lot of hard work and did a lot of overtimes, and I take this opportunity to thank you all in my portfolio. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Krishna. So I dropped off the call slightly there, but I'm back in. Technical issue, but still. Councillor Sue Anderson.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, really, I've been delighted to hear my colleagues echoing the kind of praise I have for our voluntary sector and for the way that they and council officers have worked so hard to actually make a difference for our vulnerable people. Everything from setting up the community hub, helping with organising the food deliveries, trying to make sure that everybody's involved. And I'd also like to thank the very many ordinary residents of Harrow who have just actually done the right thing by their neighbours, helped with shopping, picked up prescriptions, done a lot of things they wouldn't normally do, but they felt that they should do. I don't think I need to say too much more, but I would very much like to thank Alex Dewsnap and his team and the voluntary sector organisations, Voluntary Community Sector Forum, Voluntary Action Harrow Co-op, Harrow Community Action, and the Harrow Young Foundation for all their amazing work together to do the best we possibly can for all our residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sue. Thank you for time. We'd now like to invite Councillor Paul Osborne. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Leader. I don't know how you want me to do this. It's obviously a very different thing because there's just one report coming to Cabinet today, and obviously it's quite a wide-ranging report. I have some general comments I'd like to make, and then 4 specific areas that I'd just like to raise. I don't know if you want me to just do it all in one go or to make the general comments and then do one issue at a time. I'm happy to do whichever works for you.
To make it easier, we're hopefully going to finish by 8 o'clock because of the clap for carers is at 8 o'clock. But we've also got another opportunity in a couple of weeks' time when it goes to scrutiny. So if we don't pick any questions up there, we can pick them up tonight. But if you want to ask your questions, and then if you want to make any comments as well.
I'll start by making the general thing. I mean, first of all, I really do wish I lived in the borough that you've been describing in your statements and in the questions earlier. Unfortunately, I live in Harrow and have had a markedly different experience in some respects to what you say. Now, that's not to say there hasn't been amazing work by staff. It's not to say there haven't been some good examples of things going well. But I also think it's important to recognise where things haven't gone well. I'd like to start off by paying tribute to the frontline staff, and indeed all the staff who've worked so hard over this period. The people providing social care have done an amazing job. People in children's services, our refuse collectors and other people on the front line in public realm, and also some of the back office staff, in particular the communication staff, I think have done a really good job in trying to get some quite difficult messages out to the borough. So I'd like to start off by doing that. I'd also like to thank officers and you as leader of the council for involving and briefing the opposition throughout this. We are grateful to it. It hasn't been done in all boroughs across London, and we're grateful that it's been done in Harrow, and hopefully we've tried to contribute in a constructive manner. But unfortunately, some of the constructive suggestions we make aren't always listened to. The most obvious example at the moment is the repeated pleas we made not to use Teams for these meetings, the repeated pleas we made to use Zoom, the repeated suggestions that I made as recently as Monday, when we tried to have a meeting with yourself, Adam Swirsky, the chief executive, and half of you couldn't make it to that meeting, that there were real problems and real training was needed. That was ignored. So that's the general thing. I think if I then go through a couple of specific points, I'd like to start off by talking about the business grants. I think it's true, as Councillor Swirsky says, that we did start off in a difficult place, and we do have a complex series of challenges in terms of the number of businesses we have, the type of
We seem to have lost the sound, Paul.
Councillor Oswald, just note you were on mute.
Was I on mute for that whole time? Have I done 4-minute speech and not heard me, or did it go back on mute because one of you didn't like it?
The last 3 seconds, I think.
Okay, it's probably someone didn't like what I was saying, but so be it. The business grants thing, which is probably the best time to mute me. I recognise all the challenges we've had, and I certainly recognise the work and effort that the team in that department has put in. But we're not just slightly behind other boroughs. We are the worst in London by a significant margin, and one of the worst in the country. I think we're the 6th worst at the last figure. And that is just unacceptable. There are a number of businesses that may well go bankrupt because we haven't been able to deliver the money that was given to us by central government in a timely manner. So I think it's important that we try and understand that went wrong, maybe apologise to those businesses. I noticed we have improved the communication, but at the beginning the communication to those businesses was very poor. I also think there's issues still around the depot. I'm glad to see that the Waste and Recycling Centre has reopened. I think it was a mistake to stop the garden waste service. I understand the challenges, but a number of other boroughs were able to keep that service going, and I think stopping that service has contributed to this peak we're seeing over the days. But I do worry about putting all our hopes in a booking system. I have to say my experience of council IT projects today, let alone in recent weeks, is that they may well not deliver what we expect. And I think we need to start looking at alternatives if that doesn't work and if the demand does stay as high. And obviously the capacity there will always be less because of the issues around social distancing and the measures we've rightly had to put in place. So I would ask officers if they could now start looking at if there are any traffic measures they can put in place. I know these may take a number of weeks, but if we start them now, they can actually take effect in a couple of weeks. If we wait for a couple of weeks and find out that the booking system either doesn't work, doesn't help resolve the problem, then we have an additional couple of weeks before we can help the traffic. And there are people trying to get out of their houses around Forward Drive who are really struggling, stuck in 40 minutes traffic just to go to the shops or to go to work. There are people trying to do business around there who are again stuck in very long traffic, and it's really important that we have contingency measures in place and the traffic orders if we need them, if necessary. I would also say one of the things that really does concern me is we are looking at restarting the Harrow Strategic Partnership, which for those thousands watching on the web stream and for others who don't remember that, that's the regeneration programme and the new civic centre. I would implore all members of the council or cabinet really to think about this. The world has changed. I think we all recognise that. The way the council is working, or in the case of cabinet not working, has changed everything. And we really have to take a step back and look at whether or not the scheme we currently have people bidding for is the right scheme. And I really do think that trying to rush things to a July cabinet is a mistake. And the final point I'd like to make, and I did raise this with the monitoring officer earlier today, is specific to one of the recommendations, recommendation 5, which is a delegation to the chief executive. I'm unclear from reading the report, and I'm unclear from looking at the current delegations that the chief executive has, and indeed you as leader have, to take urgent action if it's necessary, what that recommendation actually adds. The chief executive has used the power to make decisions and to do things if needed for the smooth running or the operational effectiveness of the council. You as leader on the cabinet side of things have the power to make urgent decisions where they're necessary to safeguard the interests of the council. I think that should be enough, but I did specifically ask the monitoring officer if there were instances where that wasn't enough and where that increased delegation would be necessary. If that isn't the case, and there aren't, I would ask you to remove that recommendation. Thank you, Leader, for your time.
Thank you, Paul. You've asked a number of questions. Actually, if I go to, I'm going to do something unusual at the moment. I'm going to go to, we got the clap for carers at 8 o'clock, which I'm keen to pause the meeting for. Adam, did you want to respond now, or did you want to respond in a moment?
I'm happy to either respond now or do so just as part of final brief contribution.
If you want to respond now, then we'll bring John Higgins in, and then I'll respond to some of the other questions Paul's raised when I sum up.
Yeah, I would just say on the business grants, I think there's two really critical points to make on this. The one is that our focus throughout that process was to make sure that the right businesses got the money. Now, in our case, given all those challenges that Paul, you are very familiar with and have been in the same discussions around, we know that took us longer, but it was absolutely the right thing to do. And when you talk about businesses getting money later than others, we are talking about days here and not weeks. And most critically, I'd say that I'm confident there is not a single business in Harrow that has gone bankrupt as a result of not getting their grant on time. And the reason I'm confident about that is that we made sure that any business that was flagging issues, that we accelerated it as far as possible. And there's been no evidence that any business had major financial difficulties as a result of those delays. Of course, I wanted those grants to go out as quickly as possible, but I think it's completely wrong to say that our approach was anything but the approach that got the money to the right people as soon as we possibly could.
Thank you, Adam. I'll come back to your point on recommendation 5 in a moment, Paul. I'd just like to quickly invite John Higgins in. Are you there, John?
Yes, certainly I am. Can you hear me fine?
Fine, yeah.
I just want to make an some overarching points and then two specific points. I mean, I do firstly want to just echo the comments that you made at the beginning of the meeting, Leader, in terms of expressing condolences to all the families in Harrow who've lost loved ones due to this COVID-19, because at the end of the day, this all comes down to people. In terms of some of the points that are made in the report and people have acknowledged tonight, I do want to pay tribute to the collaborative work between across the community and voluntary sector and also with the council. I think it has been an example of a great achievement of partnership work, because it had to happen in a crisis at a great pace, really. And I think it's something for everybody in Harrow to be proud of. I think it does demonstrate real community resilience and demonstrates that exists in Harrow. Excuse me. And I think it does demonstrate the importance of maintaining a vibrant community and voluntary sector. In terms of specific points, I mean, I think there are numerous examples of where practical things have been done to help residents. I think one that's highlighted in the report is worth pointing out: the work done on establishing the community hub services, which required a huge amount of partnership work across the voluntary sector, but also establishing a helpline and then a Help Harrow website. So I think that stands out as a great achievement of this partnership work. Other examples, I think, that are more grassroots are the work that faith groups and the mutual aid groups established in all wards have done, which has really been a bottom-up support to people across the borough. I think the second point that I want to make is that in many ways the report underestimates the financial risks or financial issues to Harrow as a borough, as opposed to Harrow as a council. There are many voluntary groups and charities whose funds have been affected by all that's happened recently. One, for example, the ability to fundraise through mass events or the running of things like charity shops. Many organisations are less or totally not dependent on council contracts, but on fundraising. So this does have a particular impact on local organisations. But indeed, some of those running services are facing higher costs due to things like the use of agency staff or the need to invest in IT, which the council has also flagged. I mean, the report does outline measures that the council has taken to mitigate some of these risks to the sector, and that's greatly welcomed, but they will not eradicate them. I think we need to be able to respond quickly if vital local organisations do face financial collapse, to the extent that the council can. And it's difficult to put a figure against the additional financial pressures faced by Harrow voluntary organisations in the way that the report has done in terms of the pressures faced by the council's budgets. But that might be something we want to think about. But I do think that the issue of financial risk to the community voluntary sector, which has been so essential in addressing some of the response to the crisis, I think that should be flagged in any contact or communication with central government, so that it isn't just the financial risk to the council that are at risk here. I think finally, I just say that I think the sector is very keen to continue the good partnership work as we move forward through this ongoing crisis and start to begin the work around recovery.
Thank you, John. That's very timely, actually. It's now 8 o'clock, and I think that what we should be doing now is showing our support for all those key workers, for the NHS, for the key workers, the frontline staff, numerous volunteers and partner organisations, for those right through the organisation who kept public services going, and to those who came to help. Thank you. We should make a real good noise about it all, because it's a very key think. We've worked out who our key workers are. I think. Thank you very much, everyone. I think it is something that started from the community to move through the community. The amount of people who do go out now and clap for all those people. But I just want to sum up some of the questions that Paul's made. But before I do so, I think Councillor Adam Swirsky wants to just talk about the second part around recovery and that part. I haven't forgotten your questions, Paul. I will come back to them after Adam's spoken.
Thank you, Graham. I was going to briefly say that I think this report, really highlights the many things that have happened over the past couple of months. It's been quite an extraordinary period, and it's been a bit like drinking through a fire hose, and the teams have done amazingly through it. And to think, how the last 2 months could have been, it's been a terrible period, but I think we've done extraordinarily well through it. But we know that this is not over, that there is much more to do, and as well as the public health emergency, we're now entering an economic emergency as well, and it's essential that the council continues to do everything that it's in its powers, as well as working with others across West London, London, and nationally, to make sure that we, as the phrase goes, build back better out of this crisis. And so there's much more to say on that, which I think we will come back to in a future meeting. But much work is already underway, and the report does touch on that. And it's worth just saying that obviously one of the things that will be critical as we come out of this is and think about economic recovery is how we continue to invest in Harrow. Paul referenced the Harrow Strategic Development Partnership and calls for further delay around that. And I think he's completely right that we need to think very carefully about our investments, about how we take that forward. It's a big decision for the council. It's absolutely critical to get it right. But I think he's wrong when he says that we should simply delay ad infinitum at a time when what this borough needs is us to continue investing in it, continue investing in its local economy, but also continue investing in the housing supply for people in Harrow, affordable housing for people, for key workers that we've just clapped for, so that they can also have a decent home. So we will come back to those topics in future meetings, and there's lots more to say about that, but I'll leave it there. Thanks, Graham.
Thank you very much, Adam. I just want to answer some of the questions, and if I don't, we'll probably get challenged at scrutiny again in a few weeks' time. Before I really want to sum up, I want to answer Paul's question directly. About living in Harrow, and I do notice what Harrow's like. We've gone through some major challenges over the last few years. We've been underfunded for so long. Our services are being challenged all the time because lack of funding. And that's why I said right at the beginning that we've come from a position of, in February, looking at where we had a £5 million in-year budget gap, from next year a £23 million budget pressure, to actually with the services under severe pressure and not ready for a virus or a pandemic. But I'm proud of the fact that the council managed to stand up, all the council, working. We'll talk about the other organisations in a moment, but all the council stepped up and came forward and pushed the boundaries really. And I'm proud to be living in Harrow, to see what the people have done to support so many. Over the years, we've seen 40% of our children living in poverty. We've got the highest number of low-paid workers. So they've been badly affected by this virus. Now they're in the gig economy as such, and they've lost all their income. They've come together. We've been supported by the rest of the residents in this community. And as Krishna was saying about the faith communities coming together, as Sue was saying, the voluntary sector, and as John was saying as well, that people have come together to try and support those in most desperate need. Do I think this crisis is over? No, I don't. I think we've got either a second wave coming, or we've got a severe financial pressure that's going to come and hit Harrow going forward. And we're going to be more harder hit because of the way we've come from. But what I'm proud of is all the things that people have done. And I think that gives us all hope for a positive future. I think we can learn from what we've done, the speed that people move to, and we spoke about IT, but IT moved to moving nearly 1,000 people to remote working in 4 weeks. There's something like that we've never been able to do before. So I have been humbled over the past 8 weeks, I think, by the amount of work that has taken place across Harrow, people going above and beyond to deliver services that were so desperately needed and for keeping our residents safe, fed and protected. Some of the non-critical services have been delayed, and those staff, without any quibble or anything, have just gone straight over and started supporting those critical services. And when we talk about the waste collection service, when we had people who were self-isolating, it was other staff who came in and supported them so we can ensure those waste collections could take place. And the garden waste collection, while it's important, I think the priority was to do the food waste, recycling waste and residual waste, which was all done and without any failure whatsoever. And I pay credit to them for being able to do that. For our special needs team, who transport team, who carried on delivering, not just delivering the meals out to Meals on Wheels. And we'll come back to some of the heroic things that they've had to go through over the past few weeks. But they've also picked up people who suspected coronavirus and taken them to the testing centres, one of the only boroughs to actually do that. So we've prioritised services, and yes, some services haven't been done, but I'm proud that I was living in Harrow with the staff and support that we've had. But it's also, I think, it goes further than this. It is part of the recommendations, but on behalf of Cabinet, I would sincerely like to thank Sean Harris as our Chief Executive, Paul Hewitt, Paul Walker, Charlie Stewart, Dawn and Hugh, who are our corporate board at Harrow Council, for the hard work they and their teams have done to get us through this crisis, and ask that they please pass on our sincere thanks to all of their teams for the speed and flexibility in rising to the many challenges of dealing with the COVID-19 crisis. Our priority has always been to make sure around safeguarding that people are safe, that we can build up those services that people do not relied on. And when you've got 12,000 people on the list that are clinically and still shielding for a number of reasons, but also the hidden people that have come forward that are destitute, and they've been able to support them. The services that we've been able to continue to provide throughout the crisis has been hugely welcomed by so many within our communities. Staff from across the council have come together to achieve what many thought would be impossible, all the while putting themselves at risk. They maintain the essential services our residents rely on. And when we come together to celebrate the rebuilding of Harrow, you will hear their stories. And I think what it has done is really shown the true value of local government and why Harrow is such a great place to live in. We don't know what our future holds, but I think with the people we have and this working with us across Harrow, I think that gives us a hope for a positive future. And so when we move to moving to your point around the recommendation on recommendation 5, this report was written a couple of weeks ago and has been regularly updated, and even updated this week with a supplementary report. But what we need to do is, yes, the chief executives can make decisions in a size of an emergency, and has done so, and all of that has been recorded. My view has always been about the democratic oversight, which I've tried doing across party to involve people so they know what's going on. So really, I'm oblivion about the recommendation 5, whether we do need it. But I would say that if a second crisis, a peak was to come along, then we need to move quickly and make those decisions, which Sean has done on our behalf, but he's also consulted with us. So I've would therefore make a recommendation that we amend recommendation 5, that the Chief Executive is authorised, following consultation, leader of the Council and relevant portfolio holder, and also the leader of the opposition, to take any urgent decisions necessitated by the COVID-19 emergency. And I will say that it is just to do with the COVID-19 emergency. And as we come out of this and we start rebuilding Harrow, as Adam has just said, you know, we need some of this work that's been worked through hard, and we will be, as we start opening up democracy again in a proper way, we will make sure these decisions are properly challenged and answered. We can't do it all tonight on the call. We started slightly later than we wanted to, but I think we're learning from things, and that's what I like about, you know, Harrow, that we try it and we try hard to make it work. And I'm proud of the fact that people did try hard and they did get things working. And when we talk, just final one, when we talk about the business grants, those staff were working 7 days a week. They came in over the weekend to try and get that sort of resolved. They needed to make sure that it went to the right person and there's no fraudulent claims made, because any fraudulent claims was the council had to pay for, so, and put on the council taxpayer. But I just commend the fact that we've done really well with what we had, and I've been so positive about it. And I've just one final thing, because I'm the chair of the meeting, I'm allowed to say one final thing, but it's the fact that across London people talk about the excellent work that has been done in Harrow. They don't ridicule it, they come and ask us how we did it and how we're going to carry on going forward. And I think the West London Alliance and the partnerships we had are going to come out of this a lot stronger than we went in, because with mutual respect of what we can all do.
So, Leader, can I just come back very quickly on 2 things? Because I think it's really important, especially the delegation point. Because what I've been trying to say, or tried to say, was that the delegations already exist, and this crisis, the fact that we made all these decisions, shows that they work. And actually, and whilst I welcome, if you're going to add leader of the opposition, I welcome that. But actually, the delegations we have already within the scheme of delegations allow you as leader to make executive urgent decisions, and allow the chief executive to make decisions, either executive or non-executive, if they are necessary for the delivering of services efficiently within the borough. So,
the point is made, Paul.
Sorry?
Your point has been made, and that's what I'm saying. You know, we're regularising something that's there. We just remove a recommendation 5 because we need the meeting's been going on for some time now.
But it did
and
stop.
It's about whether who's authorised to make it, I think, is the mind in the situation.
And just also, in case I wasn't clear enough, or in case it was the point when my microphone wasn't working, I did specifically pay tribute to Fern and his team in the business supports area. I'm very much aware of how hard they've worked throughout this. However, I think it's only right that it gets raised that there are real challenges in terms of the delivery of those grants in Harrow. And it's not even mentioned in the report until you get to the financial officer's comments. And that's why I thought it was worth bringing up and mentioning to the extent that they did. But of course, I recognise the work the staff has done, the work the voluntary sector has done in Harrow. I recognise there's been some great things done over this crisis, but I also think it's my job as the leader of the opposition to point out where things haven't worked and where we can learn from it. And finally, on the question of money, let's be clear, to run a virtual meeting does not cost money. That's not a failing of government funding. That's a failure of decision making and listening to people who had actually already run meetings for public authorities who are telling you that teams would not work.
Finished? Thank you. And I said, and as I said, the answer to Councillor Marilyn Ashton, Teams fits in with our wider IT infrastructure. It's used by lots of number of councils, and it also gives to make sure that our documents and data are kept safe. And that's why we stayed with Teams. We now move to the recommendations that are on the thing. We don't need recommendation 5 because as Chief Executive is already authorised to make those urgent decisions, and I have confidence that he will consult with us before making them. So we're now moving to the recommendations. So we got recommendations 1 to 9. I'm just looking on. Sorry. This is not a technological thing. I'm just making sure I've got the right page on the sheet before we move to recommendations. So we got the 9 recommendations on the papers before us. I need to go through each individual cabinet member, and I'm going to do that in alphabetical order after Keith, to make sure that we've got whether people agree to, first of all, to remove recommendation 5, and also to endorse the other recommendations on the order paper. So first of all, can I ask Councillor Keith Ferry?
Yes, I think when we vote, we should vote the same way as we did in the planning committee last night, to confirm that we've heard all of the proceedings. So therefore I would say I've heard all the proceedings and I agree with the recommendations.
Thank you, Keith. Sue?
Unmute.
No, you unmuted and muted again.
Right, how about that?
Excellent.
Right, can I say again, I confirm that I've heard all the proceedings and I'm prepared, I agree with the recommendations.
Thank you, Sue. Simon?
Simon Brown, I've heard all the proceedings and I agree with the recommendations.
Thank you, Simon. Phil?
Thank you, Leader. I confirm I've heard all the proceedings of the meeting and I agree with the recommendations I've tabled.
Thank you, Phil. Varsha?
I confirm I have heard all the proceedings and go with the recommendations.
Thank you. Christine?
Thank you, Leader. I confirm that I've also heard all the proceedings and I agree with the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Krishna?
Yeah, I heard it all. I agree with the recommendation.
Thank you, Krishna. Adam?
I confirm that I have heard all the proceedings and I agree with the recommendations.
Thank you. So, and I agree as well. So the recommendations are agreed that are on page 6 of the order paper. Item 7 is any other urgent business. We don't have any other urgent business tonight. So I'd like to thank you all for attending, and feedback is always welcome to send to Charlie. And thank you, Andre, for hosting it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with you sending those thanks to the officers. Thank you.
I'm sure the chief executive will be feeding back to Charlie tomorrow.
Thanks, Paul. That was helpful.
No problem.
Are we done?
Okay, we done?
You were done?